Okay, here we go. Welcome back. It's been a couple weeks. It's great to see everybody. Thank you guys so much for hopping into this practice room, chilling with me for a while as we talk about topics that cross both science and music and that are of interest in our server. So thank you very much. I'm so excited to be hanging out with you guys again. Just some announcements before we hop into our topic today, which is all about sleep. It was good to see everybody during the Play with Ray video. It was just so wholesome. I can't believe that Ray made such a great video that really highlighted people's love of music and then rewarded them for it. Like, it was like, who knew that he was going to give away $10,000? So just to show our appreciation for those wholesome videos, make sure that you go to YouTube, comment wholesome comments on the YouTube video. Subscribe to his YouTube channel if you haven't done so already. And make sure that you send it out to your friends. Like, these are tough times. You know, everybody's looking for some wholesome content right now. I did a quick Google search. I don't know why I needed the information. Oh, because I needed to find out some stuff on Ray Strad for a little bit later. And someone actually posted the video of Ray playing to horses. And they're like, if you need something wholesome today, watch this. So, you know, make sure that you share those videos because you might brighten somebody's day. Remember, congratulations to everyone who got into the recital coming up on August 22nd. If you didn't get in, no worries. There'll definitely be more recitals. We'll all cheer you on. But if you don't forget, the recital is on August 22nd. Information is under the concert hall tab in the server. If you enjoy Molecast and you want to listen to previous episodes of the Molecast, quick shout out to our amazing server mom, Annie. She made a Molecast bot. I don't know if it's officially live yet or if we're still debugging it, but it'll be able to prompt you to previous episodes of Molecasts. And the link I'm just going to drop in the chat right now so you guys can go ahead and join the science server. It's a place for people who are scientists, aspiring scientists, and people who just vibe with science. And we're super wholesome. So make sure that you come and join us. All right. Welcome to August, everybody. Oh my gosh, where did the time go? Like, I'm looking at the calendar right now. It's August 2nd. The server was made like March 22nd. We've been here for about 4 months. It's crazy. And, you know, when we first started, we were, you know, getting into a pandemic. Our schedules are really getting thrown off. A lot of us were, you know, trying to adjust to life online, you know, adjust to the crazy schedule of the Discord server, also known as the server that probably never sleeps. And now we're getting ready to get back to a new normal. A lot of us are getting ready to go back to school, either in person or online, go back to university. Some of us are adjusting to new work schedules, either in person or online. Auditions are coming up. I mean, I just got an email last week from my conductor that was like, oh yeah, don't forget, auditions are in late September. And I was like, what? How are we already here? So I'm low-key freaking out about that. But yeah, we're getting ready. For some of us that aren't getting back to work, we're trying to adjust our schedules to suit this new normal. And one of the things that also needs to get adjusted with adjusting to a new schedule is our sleep. And I know that we all love to comment in the general chat, go to sleep. What sleep? We don't sleep. And actually, I was really interested to find out how many times we say the word sleep in the server. As of an hour ago, we have said the word sleep 20,650 times. So for all of you, I can just see chat blow up right now. Like, what the? So let me put this in perspective for you. If someone paid me $10 for every time that we say the word sleep, I would be able to afford a Gagliano violin, which comes to $200,000 US dollars. If Hank Chang paid me $500 every time someone said the word sleep, I'd be a $10 million violinist, and I would just buy a Strad. Hell yeah! Yes! So we do really focus on sleep a lot in this server. And, you know, as a molecular biologist, as a scientist, there is a lot of research that's being done on sleep. And when I Googled the word sleep, there is so much information out there. There's a lot of popular websites, a lot of scientific articles. Like, how can one person sift through all of that information and try to determine, like, what is good sleep? How does sleep affect me? How can I improve my sleep schedule? So today we're going to try to answer those questions. Basically, the science behind sleep. You know, how does sleep affect musicians? And I found this study that just blew my mind. I am so excited to share this with you. And finally, some habits that are backed by science that could hopefully help to improve your sleep. And I can already hear the chat go like, oh, here we go. I'm going to feel attacked. Like, I'm a horrible sleeper. You know, how Mole's just going to rip my sleep schedule apart. No worries, chat, because let me be honest about my sleep schedule. On a typical weekday, I usually leave Discord roughly around 9:30 p.m. I'm up at 3 a.m. So I get also little to no sleep. Yes, F in the chat, please. I also get little to no sleep. So it's okay. We are learning together how to be better sleepers. And let's just jump into it. Also, before we jump into the research, before we jump into all the interesting stuff that we're going to talk about today, couple things. If you have questions, please hold them till the end. Because the chat will just zoom by and we don't want 6-hour slow mode. The other two things, number one, I am a graduate student working on my PhD in molecular biology. I am not a medical professional. If you feel that your sleep habits may require medical attention, or if you need specific comments on your sleep, I strongly suggest that you talk to a licensed doctor, MD, DO, or your parent or guardian, as being a responsible scientist and member of our community. The second disclaimer that I also want to say is I am speaking, all opinions I speak on this Molecast are my own opinions. They do not represent Ray Chen or the Ray Chen violin server. Just so we're all on the same page. Great. Awesome. So with that, let's go ahead and hop right into the science. All right. So sleep. So there are three main states of sleep. There is a state of wakefulness. There is a state that we call preparing for sleep, also known as non-rapid eye movement, or NREM, and a third portion of sleep, which is also known as rapid eye movement, or REM sleep. You guys probably heard a lot about REM sleep. You guys probably heard a lot about wakefulness, but maybe not so much about NREM. But collectively, these states of sleep are a part of our biological clocks. And in science, we classify the biological clock as being 12 hours of being awake and 12 hours being asleep. In reality, that's not true. Humans spend 15 to 17 hours being awake and about 7 to 9 hours being asleep. And this clock is also closely tied to when we feed and when we fast. So when we're awake, we're usually feeding, and when we're asleep, we're usually fasting. However, this sleep-wake cycle doesn't apply to everybody, such as Hank Chang, who only sees 24 hours of darkness. So F in the chat for poor Hank, never seeing the light of day. Um, and if we break down the actual sleep cycles that occurs for proper sleep and proper cell function, when we initially fall asleep, we are entering into light sleep. And light sleep is really classified by, we consciously try to, go into a relaxed phase. Our body is preparing for deep sleep by slowing our breathing, by lowering our body temperature. And a lot of people that I've talked to in the chat, either here or on the science server, have said, I've slept 8 hours, but I woke up this morning and I still feel really, really tired. Why is that? Well, part of the reason for that is because you probably woke up to an alarm clock. And if you woke up to an alarm clock versus waking up naturally, you're actually interrupting NREM 1, which is, where you're starting to go into another cycle of sleep. So most people, when they're woken up during this light sleep, you may have felt like you haven't slept at all, when in reality, you probably already had enough sleep cycles to go through your day. Then as you go from light sleep into deep sleep is where we start seeing the action. So it was actually really funny. I was talking to a couple friends in real life at the lab, and I was like, yeah, I'm doing a lot of this sleep research for this Molecast that I'm up to, and I didn't realize how active our bodies and our cells are during deep sleep. Because when you go to sleep, it's super relaxing, and you don't really remember, a lot of what goes on. I mean, I barely remember my dreams. To those of you who can remember your dreams, kudos, because I remember nothing. But in deep sleep, our bodies and our cells are repairing and regenerating. Bone mass is being rebuilt, and in the process of rebuilding bone mass, we're actually strengthening our immune system, which is really important now because of COVID, to make sure that we have a strong immune system. And as we prepare to go from deep sleep into REM sleep is where the good stuff is. This is where we get most of the brain activity, most cell processing, metabolic function, as well as the important functions that occur while our conscious mind is at sleep. And this REM cycle actually lasts for about 90 minutes. So let me backtrack a little bit here. One study looked at REM sleep, and they asked the question, well, if we compare light, deep, and REM sleep, how is our problem-solving ability drastically improved? And what they found was, if you want to improve your problem-solving ability, that you need REM sleep compared to light or NREM sleep. So a lot of people say, I'm just going to take a quick 30-minute nap, wake up and try to do more work. You're actually not getting into REM sleep at that point. You're still probably in light or maybe entering into deep sleep during that time. But the entire process of sleep requires 4 to 5 sleep cycles. So when you read a lot of these popular science or sleep articles that say you need about 7.5 to 8 hours of sleep, this is where they're getting this 7.5 hours from. It's because you need 4 to 5 sleep cycles. So if you do 90 times 5, divide by 60, you get 7.5. So that's where that 7.5 hours is coming from. But chat, hold on to that number for a little bit, because we'll have to backtrack when we start talking about the differences between adolescent sleep cycles and adult sleep cycles. So with that being said, that on average we need about 7.5 hours of sleep for proper cell function and proper reparations. I asked in the science server, I asked people for the following sleep information. So let me hop there real quick. So in Molecast data, and sometimes I require data for these podcasts, sometimes I don't, I ask the server the following questions. How much sleep do you usually get daily, referring to now during the pandemic? Is this different from when you are at school or at work? And do you look at screens before bed? So when I asked these questions and I compiled the data, I actually found some really interesting results. Now, during the pandemic, people are getting about an average of 8 to 9 hours of sleep, which is, I was like, wow, that's amazing. But then when people go back to school, we're only averaging about 6 to 7 hours of sleep. But the thing that, yeah, I know, right? 8 to 9 hours of sleep. I was like, wow, this is great. We're all getting the rest and proper cell repair that we need. But the thing that was most shocking about the data that I received from all of you was that we all looked at our screens before bed. I thought I was the only one, but everyone was looking at their screens before bed. And that kind of brings me into my next point of like why light is important for regulating our sleep and wake cycles. So when we perceive light through our eyes, it's helping our master pacemaker. This is also known as SCN. And this helps to sync all of our biological clocks. These clocks include our sleep cycle, our feeding cycle, and peripheral clocks, such as clocks that are found in our liver, fat, pancreas, muscle cells. And they regulate things such as glucose levels, fat formation, metabolism, and respiration. So basically things that help us to process food and energy. So if you're looking at light during a sleep cycle, you're accidentally activating these pathways that are involved in processing sugar, processing fat, metabolism, and respiration. So you're actually causing your clocks to not be synced properly. And I was like, oh no, is this why I wake up and I think, oh, if I just take a bite of ice cream, I'm going to feel so much better. And if that is not causing you to think, there was another study that took some mice, and there are a set of genes that are responsible for regulating our biological clocks, and they completely removed these genes from the mice. And they asked the question, what is going on with these components that help to regulate our metabolism? So what they did was they had the mice go through a typical circadian rhythm cycle in a lab, which is 12 hours of light and 12 hours of darkness, and they took time points every 6 hours. And what they found was that a majority of the components that help to regulate your metabolism peaked at night. So if you're up at night, your metabolism isn't peaking with you. It needs to have that continual clock it needs to have that regulation in order to function properly. The mice that were missing the genes that are important for regulation of your clock showed the following phenotype, which is just characteristics. They showed a slightly increased body weight. Their biological rhythms were shorter. They had an earlier onset of night activity, and shocker, they aged faster. These mice got older faster than the normal mice. So for everyone in the chat who has called Ray a boomer and has stayed up super late, congratulations, you have boomer cells. I'm just watching chat explode right now. Yes, you all have boomer cells. So now I feel bad as Ray isn't here, because he could use this against you, but now that he isn't, like, he won't know that you guys all have boomer cells. So the biology behind this is that there's a particular enzyme that's involved in virtually most metabolic pathways. And this enzyme is also involved in repairing DNA. If this enzyme is not activated in time, it doesn't repair the DNA. and it causes aging of your cells. So this is the biology behind why it's important to get sleep, so your cells aren't aging faster than what your actual age is. Exactly, Noodles. This is how we stay young. And just a quick shout out. Yes, Clarinet, I am also a boomer. My birthday is on Wednesday. Yeah, I'm getting very, very close to the big 3-0. I have one more year. But yeah, I saw that and I was like, whoa. Yes, I'm getting close to that point. I'm a little sensitive. Oh, thank you so much, chat. So yeah, it's really important that we get the sleep that we need. The science says, we need sleep to help form these connections, to help our cells, process all these different pathways, to make sure that we're, feeding and sleeping at the appropriate times. But this is a classical music server that never sleeps. So, why is it important, Mole, that I, a musician or a music lover, if you don't play an instrument, get sleep? Well, first off, you need REM sleep in order to, help in developing creativity, because REM sleep actually fuels creativity. It's not light sleep or deep sleep. And that's because during REM sleep, our neurons are reforming connections, helping us to improve our memory and also helping us to problem solve. It's also important to get sleep because if you don't get sleep, you have a really slow reaction time. So if you have to count to 4, your metronome is really off. and I can say this personally. I have experienced this week. So shout out to everyone who was in the practice room with me as I was sight reading Chrysler's Preludium and Allegro. And for all the violinists out there who have played this piece before, I was sight reading the double stop section, and I had the slowest time getting through that section. And that was because I was tired. I woke up at 3. I think by the time I went into the practice room, it was maybe around 6 p.m. Thank you, guys. So my reaction time is really slow. My problem-solving skills were probably as low as they could possibly go. And yeah, so I realized at that point, it's causing me, not having enough sleep is causing me to have slower progress with this piece, lower quality. I haven't even posted an Instagram video on that section yet because every time I play it, it sounds like crap. Yes, I see you, Sar. Those double stops are giving me anxiety just thinking about them. I will move on. And also, too, your mood is affected by sleep. So if you're trying to play a piece that is super passionate or really sad or really cheerful, you're not going to be able to play it with that same feeling because all you're going to think to yourself is, wow, I'm tired. And, if you need to play something with a lot of passion or seductive energy, how are you going to do it if all you're thinking of is, I just want to lay in my bed and sleep for 10 years? So it's really, really important to make sure you get rest. And for all those people out there who are listening to this Molecast right now and saying, well, guess what, Mole? I don't play a musical instrument. Well, listening, true active listening also requires focus because you can't listen to the different contrast and the different articulations and the directionality of the piece without making sure that you're actively focusing on the music. And if you're tired, you're definitely not going to be actively focusing. So that's just my shout out to all the people who are music lovers. But I can already feel the chat, and I'm reading Star's comment right now, so I'm really sorry I'm calling you out. How to play double stop sleep, if only were that easy. And there are many other musicians that are saying, well, wait, hold on, Mole. How am I supposed to sleep if I'm supposed to be practicing 40 hours a day? and do, go to concerts and do all these additional things. First off, this is why I put the disclaimer at the beginning. You shouldn't be practicing 40 hours. That's not real. You should be sleeping for part of that. But there was a study, and this is where I get to the most exciting part of the Molecast today. There was a study that examined the sleeping habits of musicians versus the rest of the working force in Norway. And this study came out in 2016, and it examined 1,607 part-time and full-time musicians comparative to the total population of Norway. And they asked the following questions. First, do musicians, and what they did was it was a general group, so not just classical, but also contemporary, pop, rock, etc., differ from the general population in regards to insomnia? And question number 2, does the prevalence of sleep disturbances in musicians differ from other occupations? So, and I'm looking at the chat right now, and I'm just going to put this out there because, look, if I'm going to get canceled, I want to be the first one to cancel myself. So, going back to these questions, it was a really interesting study, and I greatly appreciated this study because not only did they show the results, but they also told people the weaknesses of the study. They said that they really conducted the study through phone calls and surveys. There was a lot of different, there's other additional components, and I suggest that everyone goes and reads the study if they have time. So actually, Prady, that's you're helping me out here with this story. So what they found is that when they looked at the musicians, they found that the musicians had higher degrees of job demands, work-family conflict, and lower degrees of social support, rewards, job motivation, and job satisfaction. They also found that musicians had a higher prevalence of insomnia symptoms compared to the general population, and that was with a 95% confidence rating. And they explained this because musicians had a higher rate of non-restorative sleep and a general dissatisfaction with sleep. And they also found, this is the other shocker, classical musicians had the highest prevalence of insomnia. And within classical music, violin players are most at risk for developing insomnia. Rest in peace. F in the chat. So, yes, and that just blew my mind that violin players and classical musicians are most at risk for developing insomnia. And some more data to add to that. What they also found was that orchestral players, but not front figures or soloists, had a greater chance of developing insomnia. But let me just preface that we understand the sleep demands that soloists have to go through between jet lag, dealing with 10,000 kids. We hear you, we see you. String instrumentalists have a greater chance of developing insomnia versus woodwind and brass, which I also found really interesting. And they also did some personality traits, which I did not include in this Molecast, because some of the weaknesses were really based off of that one paragraph. But I will go back. So what they found was that brass players were more extroverted, less creative, and less anxious than string players. Similar studies have also showed higher proportions of neuroticism among string players compared to brass players. Nevertheless, These results should be read with caution, and further research is needed to look at possible differences between different sorts of musicians to map the possible mechanisms behind the prevalence of insomnia symptoms within the different genres. So that's the biggest reason why I really enjoyed this study, because they're very honest and upfront with the data that they gathered. So this was a correlation study, Prady, where they correlated, because again, everything was done via survey. So that was another one of their weaknesses, because everything was done, either via phone or via mail. But it was not a it was definitely not a experimental study. There's a really good story behind this paper. So when I originally found this paper, it was behind a paywall. And a paywall means that you have to pay in order to access the study. Yes. But luckily, my university was able to pull a couple strings and get me the study for me that I didn't have to pay, and I could share with all of you. So if you have access to your university databases, take a look and see if you're able to access that. If not, unfortunately, due to ethical standards, you really should not be distributing paywalled papers, because it prevents the correct people from getting paid, which that could be an entirely different Molecast. So all of the studies and links that I use in this Molecast will be featured on the YouTube video at the end. So you can click on those links and they will take you to all of the sources. And then finally, the study also cited that some very old papers, which was one of the weaknesses that I had with this, was that violin players apparently have the greatest amount of stress. And this was from a study in 1988. But basically, and I really questioned this study, because I saw it and I was like, I don't think that this is truly accurate. But in that paper, the citations are within there. Who is the fake mole? Yeah, you're definitely the fake mole, Cats, because there's a tilde over the E. You have to fake right. Because it's mole. It's not mole. So anyway, back to the Molecast. I really appreciated this study, because we talk about a lot how musicians have a really tough time getting sleep, and we finally have data to support the claims that a lot of musicians have been saying since I've joined the server, since before I've joined the server, and I find that really it reinforces the fact. But the one thing I did forget, and I'm looking at my notes right now, and I can't believe I forgot this. This server is basically made up of adolescents or adults. And pro gamer tip, if you're not an adolescent or adult, you should yeet yourself right now, per Discord terms of service. Don't worry, I won't tell. We'll keep the mods busy. You can just yeet yourself out. So, as I told you guys before, the average sleep length for an adult is about 7.5 to 8 hours. And adolescents require, apparently, a similar amount of sleep as well. 7.5 to 8 hours. However, a study looked at different groups of mammals: humans, mice, monkeys, rats. And what they found was that during their adolescent stages, adolescents maintained later bedtimes. There is a delay of between 1 to 3 hours before adolescents would go to bed. So for adult humans, a typical bedtime is around 10 p.m. to midnight. Maybe a little earlier, maybe a little later. If we add 3-hour delay to that could easily be 2 to 5 p.m. And that's considered normal because of this delay. So for everyone who has told people in the chat that you need to go to bed because it's 3 a.m. or 2 a.m., it might just be because you're experiencing a delay and you can't get to sleep. However, keyword is however, you still need to have the 4 to 5 sleep cycles. So the 7.5 to 8 hours of sleep. So it's important to realize that even though you're naturally wanting to go to bed at 2 a.m. in the morning, that means that you'll have to naturally wake up at 10 a.m. or 11 a.m. in the morning. So because of that, that might be why people are on the server super, super late. It's because of their biology. And the reason why for this delay in maintaining a later bedtime is because during adolescence, we're seeing the greatest amount of cell development during that time. If you need more description, go to a biology textbook. That we're not doing that here. With that, we will now go into the final part of our Molecast today, which is really how do we establish good sleep habits? And when I Googled good sleep habits, I kid you not, it was probably just as overwhelming as Googling musicians and sleep. And when I Googled that, I saw so many articles. Like I'm reading one right now, The Upside of Insomnia, how sleep deprivation aids creativity. And I was like, that's not true. Or 6 musicians told us how they avoid feeling like shit. And I was like, okay. There's just a lot of different articles out there, and you just don't know like what is good science and what isn't good science. So the big thing that I was able to pull from all the sleep habit studies that I saw was that developing a routine is crucial. And the reason for that is we've talked a lot about making sure that we maintain a good sleep-wake cycle. That during a sleep cycle, our cells are really active. They're trying to repair and reset for another day. We also don't want to disrupt the feeding and fasting cycles that we've established. So establishing a routine is important. If you haven't established a routine yet, studies suggest that you gradually ease into this new schedule. Additional studies have also shown that it takes a while to establish a good routine. It's not going to take a couple days. It takes about a couple weeks. So if you're setting a routine for yourself, let's say you're getting ready to travel to another country, you're getting ready to start school or university, you probably want to get started on your new routine about 2 weeks in advance. So that way your body can get used to it and you can start to adjust your biological clock to that schedule. The other things that were suggested include making sure that you can try to set a time for you to go to sleep that gets you about 4 to 5 good sleep cycles. I definitely, I agree with this, but I know how hard this is. And I'm looking at Gogo's comment right now. Imagine having a consistent sleep schedule. Like, I hear you, I see you. How can we have a consistent sleep schedule when there's so many things going on? We've got smash streams, we've got practice, we've got homework. Like, there's so many things that pop up during our day. And how are we supposed to deal with all that? Even though, a lot of scientists and researchers have said to try to establish a routine, sometimes it's maybe not going to bed at the same time every night, but making sure that when we're getting ready to go to sleep, that we do proper things. One of these things is try to avoid caffeine, alcohol, or nicotine. Those are all stimulants. Those will all cause your brain waves to become active when you need them to start slowing down so you're able to go to sleep. I see you, Al. I love caffeine too. I tend not to consume caffeine after noon, so it's 12:40 Chicago time right now. I can't have any more caffeine. Otherwise, I'll be up all night. Some people claim that they that they can drink coffee 30 minutes before they're ready to go to bed, and it has no effect on them. To those people, I salute you. That is not me. Another thing that you want to also make sure that you try to not do is exercise. Again, 3 hours before going to sleep. Again, trying to make sure that we slow our brain waves, slow our energy, so that way we can enter into restful sleep. And I laugh because I know I have a really tough time doing this, and I'm sure some of you also have the same issue. Try to avoid light 30 minutes before bed. That's so hard because I love getting into bed and I scroll through Instagram and I'm like, oh, look at this. This is so great. Or I also love to go onto Discord. Yeah, it just, I love just sitting there and just being like, oh, let me just work on chat really quick before I'm getting ready to go to sleep. And I know it's bad, but like there's that fear of missing out. Poor Annie. Yeah, or playing Smash at 3 a.m. That also doesn't help. But like that is one, if you can try to reduce it or try to delay, like if you look at your phone, then maybe wait 15 minutes and not look at something with a blue screen. And that's really the big thing, is the blue screen causes melatonin. I always pronounce this word wrong. Melatonin. I'm going to just type it in the chat. Yes, thank you, Tiago. It actually causes it to be activated, which then activates the master pacemaker, like I was telling you guys, and then the clocks get off sync, and then you're starting to process glucose and fat, and your metabolism is active again. So it's about really reducing the amount of light that our pacemaker is seeing when we're ready to go to bed. And thanks to science, I can agree with that suggestion. The other things that were suggested in helping to improve on our sleep habits was also make sure that your bedroom is trying to maintain for sleep-related activities. I am notorious for sometimes working like in bed. I'll be like on my laptop doing some quick research. I quit doing that at the start of the pandemic, and I found a drastic increase in the amount of sleep that I was getting and the amount of restful sleep that I was getting. So that's a suggestion, probably because I wasn't looking at a light source and because I actually could like tell my brain to stop thinking and go to sleep. Let me grab a sip of water here. The other final thing that was suggested was to watch the amount of food that you're consuming before you're ready to fall asleep. Some studies suggested that you avoid eating large meals before bed, like 2 to 3 hours. I don't really think, looking at the science data from scientific papers that are out there, that there's a particular time frame that you need to avoid, but it's really just making sure that you don't accidentally activate your master pacemaker, so then you're processing glucose and fat when you're not supposed to be, and then that could cause miscalibration with your feeding and fasting clock versus your sleep-wake clock, because you want them both to be in sync. When you're sleeping, you should be fasting. When you're awake, you should be eating. Which to me, that sounds like a pretty good schedule. So yeah, and with that, it's 12:44, which is great. So we've got about like 10-15 minutes that I can take a few questions from people. But thank you guys so much. My ears. What did I do? Did I do something wrong? My ears yeeted. Uh-oh. Annie? Is there something wrong? Oh, shoot. I'm sorry, guys. Rip. Rip. I'm really sorry. So actually, and if you have questions, please use this hashtag so then I can see it. But I did see a question on sleep paralysis. So I did read a little bit on sleep paralysis, and sleep paralysis is apparent during REM sleep, and that's because your body is super active during REM sleep, and it's preventing your muscles from accidentally becoming active and throwing you out of bed and getting yourself hurt. And there are some diseases that actually result in you not having sleep paralysis or having too much sleep paralysis. So when you're awake, you're unable to move, or when you're asleep, you're moving. I didn't really get into much of this research, but I did find it interesting that our bodies do try to protect us as we're trying to regenerate certain pathways and reconnect our neurons. Mole question. So is it fine to sleep late as long as you get 8 hours? So according to the research, depending on your age, you may be experiencing a sleep delay. Remember, if you're an adolescent, which is in science is classified between the ages of 13 and 21. So people who are on this server, if you're younger than that, remember, you've got to yeet. But you need to have those 8 hours of sleep because, again, your body needs those 4 to 5 sleep cycles in order to properly regenerate and be ready for another day. Hey, Davis. All right, so is it normal for some people not to sleep as much? I always sleep normally and have a great sleep cycle, but I only do 6 to 7 hours. That is perfectly fine. And the numbers that I gave are an average. So if 7.5 is 5 sleep cycles, you could be a little more, you could be a little less. It's just, it's averages. They just take a population of people and they measure the amount of sleep cycles that they have and they come up with a number. Recommend sleep schedule. So again, just like I said at the very beginning of this podcast, I am not a medical professional. I'm a graduate student getting my PhD in molecular biology. The best thing for you to do is take a look at your normal schedule, what you're doing when you're awake, what a typical week looks like for you. Contact your doctor, talk to a parent or guardian, and then figure out what works well for you. I cannot recommend sleep schedules for most people because I myself only get 5 hours of sleep. So, all right, does hunger actually affect sleep? Should you make sure to go to bed on a full stomach, or does it not matter? So that's a really interesting question, Clarinet, because what we find is that the clock, the circadian rhythm clock that regulates hunger is also synchronized with the circadian clock that regulates sleep. So what we find is that in order for your body to start going into light and deep sleep, that you shouldn't be trying to actively break down sugars and fats, that most of the body has to be ready to go into that restful sleep. So, and that's just because otherwise your body will be thinking it should be in wake cycle when it should actually be preparing for sleep cycle. So if you're hungry, I could hypothesize that if you're hungry while you're in either light or deep or REM sleep, that your body will start to synchronize towards a wake cycle, so that way you can feed instead of fast. But that's just my hypothesis. I would have to go back. Nadia! You got, so I remember we talked about rewiring your sleep cycle the other day and that you have to do it gradually. Do you have any extra tips for people desperately trying to go to bed at night instead of the morning? So I remember this question, Nadia. So in order to reset your sleep cycle, there are some things that will help to reset it. And again, talk to your doctor before trying any of those things out. Naturally, trying to reset your sleep cycle requires you, unfortunately, to set alarms. Because so the backstory to this is that Nadia asked me how I've changed from waking up at 7 a.m., 5 a.m. to now 3 a.m. And it was a very gradual cycle. I had to go from 7 a.m. to 5 a.m. for a week, and then from 5 a.m. to 3 a.m. a week. And it was really alarm clocks and listening to my body when it needed sleep and when it didn't need sleep. The additional tips that I have is during that time, having a routine will help your body to really solidify that sleep-wake cycle and to really stick to it, kind of like a diet or an exercise plan. You really don't want to deviate. Because if you do, then it's going to be really hard for your body to synchronize to the new sleep cycle that you need. And I'm assuming, Nadia, you're probably getting ready for university very soon because it's August 2nd. So if you're trying to do this sooner rather than later, I would probably start this week. So hopefully that helps. All right. Would it be better to sleep at 10 p.m. just at looking at a screen, or at 11 p.m. but haven't been looking at a screen the past hour? And this is from No. So according to the data, it's better to go to sleep at 11 and not have looked at a screen the past hour, because your sleep-wake clock is already getting ready to go to sleep. If you've looked at a screen at 10 p.m., then your body will think, oh, still need to stay awake because I've seen light and I need to process food and do other functions related to a light cycle. Do blue light filters work? It depends on what you're working on, but most blue light filters do work for screens. And the blue light filters really just to help not activate certain photoreceptors that can help to activate your master pacemaker. But no light is better than a blue light filter, which is better than blue light. So if you have to look at a screen like I do, got to keep up with Instagram, probably using a blue light filter is your best bet. So there's a couple questions here that I really don't know, and I'm looking at Curry Beakless, Curry Wendy. I did not do research on those, but if you post them in the science server, I can take a look and let you guys know later. Oh, this is a really good question. So what about having to wake up in the middle of the night and then going back to sleep? Does that count as 8 hours of sleep? So, as I asked this question too, I was like, wait, if I wake up in the middle of the night, does that interrupt the amount of sleep cycles that I'm getting? The answer is yes, because you need to have continuous sleep cycles in order to process the things that we talked about earlier, such as the metabolic pathways that are activated, preventing the damage to your cells, preventing the aging that's occurring to your cells. You have to make sure that you have these 4 to 5 sleep cycles in order to completely finish these processes, because these processes occur in the matter of hours, not in a matter of minutes. Like, for example, repairing your DNA to prevent cell aging so we don't have boomer cells can take about 6 hours. It's a pretty long time to complete that cycle. And that's one of the research projects that we've studied in my lab for a bit, looking at immunity. So it does take a while. Interrupting your sleep usually means that there's something wrong and your body needs to take care of it in a wakeful state. Is there a way that we can change ourselves to sleep more? I'm currently sleeping 7 hours, but it's not enough. Your body will tell you, and the research is pretty conclusive at this point. Your sleep cycle, your cells will know when it's had enough sleep, because then you'll need energy and you'll go into a feeding state and a wakeful state. If you need more sleep, which I always need more sleep, usually it just means you could probably nap during the day. But remember, if you are looking for REM sleep in order to help fuel creativity or problem solving, you've got to give yourself at least 90 minutes. But if you just need rest just because you need to get away, 30 minutes should be fine. Oh, Gogo, what are your thoughts on historically unorthodox sleep schedules, such as frequent short naps substituting one long sleep session? There is no sleep shaming here. You sleep the way you need to sleep, in my opinion. The science shows that It depends on the kind of sleep that you need, though, because if you need REM sleep in order to form memories, in order to problem solve, and sometimes people nap because, they just need that time away, so a quick nap is better than no sleep at all. But other people need that nap because, their bodies can't process. They're having trouble with memory recall. They're having trouble with creativity. Making sure that you have a longer nap, like a 90-minute nap, is better than having like a 30-minute nap or 20-minute nap. So that's my opinion, but there's no sleep shaming here. We are a wholesome server. Let's see. Mole question. So I tend to sleepwalk. So I didn't do a lot of research on sleepwalking. So you should probably post that in the science server. Symbalius moment. Oh, I don't even want to know. All right. Wow. And here we go. So let's see. I think we have enough time for like one more question. Oh, so Faye will have the final question. Why do I always feel tired after waking up, even though I had almost 9 hours of sleep? And that's just because if you're waking up to an alarm clock, you're probably waking up during light sleep, which is why a lot of people feel tired afterwards, because you're getting ready to go through another cycle of sleep. If you're feeling tired after waking up naturally, it could mean that you require more sleep and you're suffering from some sort of sleep deprivation. And that's what I've read so far in the research. So hopefully that helps you. And with that, we're already approaching, 1 o'clock. And wow, there's 65 people in here. So with that, I guess I'll just go ahead and close up this session of Molecast. So we learned a lot about sleep today. The biology of sleep, why it's important for musicians to sleep, even though research has shown that violinists will never get sleep. So F in the chat for violinists. But we found out some new ways to establish good sleep habits. And I think we've had a really fun time talking today. And my voice is already going. So thank you guys so much for hanging out in one of the practice rooms for another Molecast. I'm so excited for the next episode of Molecast, which will be Sunday, August 16th. Time to be determined. I'll announce it in the science server, and it will be pinned here in general on the main server here, Ray Chen Violin. If you have suggestions for future Molecast episodes, I have a few coming up that I'm really excited about. Topic leak. So someone a couple days ago had a really interesting suggestion for a Molecast on imposter syndrome. And I was like, oh my gosh, is there biology behind imposter syndrome? And this is something that I've seen pop up not only in the general chat, but also in Ask Ray, just in general conversation. So I'm really excited to kind of dig deeper into the science behind that and talk about it. There's also conversations about food, wherever Jess is, I hope you're eating. And also a possible science behind ASMR, don't know. Kind of interested in that as well. I can already see Zen just yeeting from chat. And the chat goes wild. So we've got a few really exciting episodes coming up. But if there's topics that you guys want me to discuss and get into more of the science behind, let me know. And this has just been a lot of fun. So thank you guys so much. Will I ever have special guests too? If you're interested in doing like guest hosting with me, let me know. We can chat about it, and I can talk to you about the things that I require. It's usually I require a an outline and a few sources so that way I can read up on it, as well as like discussion from like you, me, possible other scientists. I'm not sure right now if I'm going to invite other scientists because that would require me to kind of dox myself. And I try to keep my world a bit separate. So we'll see. I'm not really sure about other scientists, but I would be open if people would want to guest host just to get practice with presenting. But I'll think about it. Yeah, and with that, I've doxed myself over and over. I mean, that's true. I can't argue with that, right? How many emails have you gotten over the past week? Yeah, I'll think about it. And with that, thank you guys so much for listening to another episode of Molecast, and I will see you I'll see you here in the server, lurking, or in general, and we'll be back for another Molecast on August 16th. So, all right, guys, have a great afternoon, evening, morning, whatever. Bye.